Hello, I'm Jeff Johnston, host of the Living Undeterred podcast. And once again, we have an awesome guest lined up today with a very timely conversation, the opioid epidemic. I want to introduce Scott Silverman from San Diego, California. He's an author, a writer, scholar, just really diving in head deep into this epidemic. So today our topic is going to be a lot on the opioid epidemic, but mostly talking about mental health, substance abuse, and addiction, where really my passion lives today. So, Scott, welcome to the show. I'm super excited to tap your knowledge, your wealth of wisdom. And again, thanks for taking the time to join us today.
Well, Jeff, thank you. It's really nice to be here. And pretty much according to Molly, I had no choice. I had to be here. So I'm here. I'm here to be a resource. And, this is something when I go to bed at night, I'm thinking about. And when I wake up in the morning, I'm thinking about it. Anything that I can do to help reduce our stigma and help families navigate getting their loved ones access to the highest, best level of care to avoid a catastrophic event, similar to what I know you experienced. So anything I can do to be of help and service, I'm sure you'll let me know. And congratulations on your big tour coming up and all the great things you've got going on.
Yeah, I'm hoping we can touch base. I know we're meeting with Jay down in San Diego, and you guys have a collaboration effort. And so I want to ask you, start off with a softball question to get the conversation going. But what is an addiction expert?
Well, that's a great question. And from my perspective, I've been in long-term recovery a little over 37 years. And what that means is I haven't had a drink or a drug for 37 years. I crashed and burned, my words, in 1984, had an attempt at suicide, and I've been involved with service work from the very first moment I got out of rehab. So I've been engaged with it. What also I think elevates me, if you will, is I'm also a treatment provider. I'm a crisis coach. I'm an interventionist, and I've written 2 books. One's called Tell Me No, I Dare You, and I did that in 2008 about my story. I ran a nonprofit for 18 years working with people coming out of jail and prison. Most had some form of addiction issue. So an addiction specialist or expert from my perspective is I'm not a clinician. I don't treat people. I create environments for people to get treatment, and I help them families navigate. So as an interventionist and a crisis coach, that's kind of where I am in the middle. And I help connect people to the highest and best level of care, meaning I don't do a diagnosis, but what I do is I try to help stop the madness and get the attention of the family. We sit down and we figure out, who needs to shut up, who needs to speak up, and who needs to really take a position on what happens next in that person's life. So between treatment, recovery, experience, anecdotal, and the decades I've had of working with others who have suffered from mental health issues and barriers to whether it be employment or relationship issues, I've gotten pretty good at what I do. And, I'm pretty well sought after. And I'm also anxious to stop going to funerals.
Yeah, I can certainly echo that sentiment. So I guess my frustration stems from why is every single statistic in the mental health space that I can find, and there's probably some odd one, but it seems like every statistic is worse than it was a year ago, 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 20 years ago. Yet we seem to be so hyper aware of these issues. And I speak often about changing behavior, how we can, scare people to change behavior, threaten incarceration, or, take their kids away or whatever. And then we can inspire people, find ways to motivate them to look at, the better road, not the bitter road. But I keep going back to this awareness thing. I'm struggling heavily with whether awareness is even working and if we need more awareness. And before you answer, let me give you a quick kind of a story of why I struggle with this. Look at the United States as a country. Everything we eat or drink, we put in our mouth has a label on it. And when I was a kid, we didn't have labels. I drank Mountain Dew because it tasted good. I didn't know it had 10 cups of sugar in it. But today we know everything. I mean, we can't really put more labels on to inform people how unhealthy 90% of the food is that they eat. Yet we're the heaviest industrial country in the world. We're 65% clinically obese in the United States. But we seem to know more about this than we've ever known before. So using that as a template about the illusion of awareness, I'm struggling with, is my job to raise awareness, because I don't really think that it's working. I think I want to find people like you and people that are making headways in actionable steps to make people's lives better, not awareness. And so, am I just looking at this from the wrong lens, or do you think I'm onto something, or are you frustrated with awareness as well?
Well, the difference probably between you and I is I'm only frustrated during waking hours. So, so yes, I am very frustrated. I think, as a person who does what I do, my phone should be ringing off the hook, and I want to drink from a fire hose. And as an SME subject matter expert, I'm in San Diego. So, what that means to me is
Yeah.
3.3 million people. We're a border town. We're the southern piece of California. There's 40 million people in our community. And, here's the thing that's interesting, I think, Jeff, and I'm going to try to answer this in a way that may not get us to an easy answer, because I don't think there is one. For example, I was a
Right.
homeless provider for 18 years. And this is back in, started the nonprofit in 93, worked with people returning from jail and prison. And, I developed this program that reduced recidivism when we had it studied. And we
Mhm.
took it to the legislative leaders, we took it to supposedly to the change agents. And I got poo pooed. I mean, when I actually started my
Mhm.
nonprofit, and I think this is still part of the stigma, when it comes to how are we going to create change. I went to all the nonprofit providers I could in San Diego. So, look, I'd like to partner with you. And what I want to do with the hardest to serve, those with non-traditional working past, homeless, chronically unemployed, street people, homeless, whatever you want to call them. And I want to help them get jobs. You
Mhm.
can do the housing, you can do the mental health, you can do the treatment side. And you know what they told me? They said, Scott, it took me 6 months to get a meeting with this group. And this is in my book. It's documented, my first book. They said to me, look, we're going to entertain your presentation. You're very enthusiastic. We appreciate your passion. Can you come back in a month? And I'm like, no, I'm
Mhm.
going to sit outside. I'm going to
Right.
wait for you guys to talk about it. And then I'll come back in and let me know what you want to do. Another month, we're going to have that many
Right.
more issues on our streets. And then and I said, based on everything
Right.
I've seen in the office today that I've waited 3 hours for the meeting, you all are not that busy. So I go back in and they say,
Mm.
look, we thought about it. We talked about it. Bottom line is this: if you're successful at what you do and you truly can reduce recidivism and you get our clients jobs, we've all discussed it. We agree. What are we going to do? And I'm like,
Mm.
wait, what? Well, what are we going to do if we don't have clients? I said, are you seriously saying out loud at group level, you don't really want to see people exit the social service system? You'd rather keep them in? And the answer was unanimously yes. So I had the worst
Mm.
case of the efforts that night I'd ever had. And the next day is when I went to the library and had to start a nonprofit, because I was just so upset. And keep in mind, this is back in 91. And San Diego's homeless
Oh, wow.
population,
Yeah.
it's just doubled in the last 2 years. So, to your
Yeah.
question, I think that people think that our municipalities are taking care of this, whatever this might be: mental
Right.
health issues, recidivism, homelessness, chronically unemployed, welfare, drug addiction, mental health issues. And I think they think that they are doing it because they put out studies and they
Mhm.
have reports, and they're doing what I call shut up minimums. Here's the information,
Mhm.
shut up. And if there's
Mhm.
information you don't have, we can certainly go back to the state and see if they'll fund another study. So to me, it's BS.
Mhm.
To me, it's the people who can really create, and I think a lot of it has to do with the political arena. We've got people coming in and out of office. And look, if you're watching today, and I'm sure you are, Jeff, what's going on with leadership is just horrible. I mean, the fact that we're not even
Mhm.
talking about the opioid crisis, other than criminal justice uh, intervening, or a horrific death. Recently a 1-year-old
Right.
overdosed with fentanyl. So that makes the news cycle for a day and a half. But you know, people not taking a position politically is on the news cycle every single day. And we're just, it's not important enough yet to people who seem to be the ones who control, if nothing else, or influence the media. Is every state doing something? I'm sure they are. Here's an example. I wrote a book, took me 3 years, called The Opioid Epidemic. Can you be any more topical? I sent a copy of my
And that was
book.
in 2021, right?
Correct. And I worked on it, 3 years prior. And actually, to be candid, and I still have it on the back burner, the title of the book was "You're Not God, That Job Is Taken." That's what I started with. And then when I got a writer,
Yeah.
co-writer, a ghostwriter to help me, they go, this situation, they were doing research for a year saying, you need to change the title. So I did, with
Yeah.
influence and enthusiasm from them. So I write the book and I send one with a nice letter to every governor in the country. I got 5 thank you
Wow.
notes, and I got a book returned from the governor, I think it was Philadelphia, and they thanked me, but said, "We can't accept gifts." And I don't
Hmm.
think there's a governor that hasn't had this issue in their community. So, I'm frustrated. Of
Right.
course, I'm older than you, and I'm entitled because I'm on Medicare now. And I just think that I I can't go to Rotary clubs on a weekly basis and try to create systemic change, 8 to 10 people at a time. And I know that, part
Right.
of my own angst and my own earnestness is I want to try to get the message out. So when I heard about your organization, they were giving us all the details of what we need to do. And I said, let me talk to the boss. My dad told me once, he said, you want something done, go talk to the person in charge. So that's why I wanted to talk with you. And I didn't even know we were going to be doing this until I kind of read the fine print. I was just signing up to have a meeting with Jeff Johnson. So, I don't know how we can help, but I see you as a kindred spirit and a brother from another mother. And, I
Hmm.
don't think there's enough of us that are connecting, but I know there's a lot of families who have suffered, who, they kind of go out and start their own nonprofit, and they get into, spending a lot of time doing grant writing and, as fundraising, and it's time consuming.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, then you
Yeah.
hire staff, then you've got to make payroll. And I've been through all that. So I think
Yeah.
there's some effective ways, but and I talk to congressmen locally. I work with criminal justice. I'm on the honorary deputy sheriffs here in San Diego. I'm on the prescription drug task force. I'm on the methamphetamine drug task force. I spend probably 25 hours a week volunteering my time to be represented at meetings where the process never seems to end. I mean, I'm on the DA's opioid task force. I'm a subject matter expert for a
Hmm.
local television station, and none of that pays me anything, but I don't mind, because when I'm out there, the phone will ring. But I'm one guy,
Yeah.
just like you're one
Right.
guy. So
Right.
I don't know if that answers your questions or not, but I went a little
It
longer.
does, and I was actually asked this question by somebody because I always try to get people try to pin me down to like some definitive answer or position, and so the question is, Jeff, not only why you're doing the tour, but what's the problem you're trying to solve? What's the problem you're trying to solve? And I got to thinking how I used to answer that question, and finally I realized, you know what? Here's how I'm going to answer the question. If what we were doing was working, we wouldn't be doing the tour.
Yeah.
If what we were doing was working, and I don't know how simple and clear and articulate that can be. And you don't have to be a clinician. You don't have to be the father of a lost child or lose your wife to alcoholism. You don't have to have all these things happen. But if you just answer the question kind of back with a statement, if what we were doing was working, we wouldn't be doing the tour. It's no more simple than that. And so if you look at the numbers, if you want to get under the hood, as I like to say, 800 is probably higher now. 800 Americans die a day from opioid overdose, suicide, and alcoholism. 800 a day. And you take, one family, I'm one house on one street in one city, in one state, in one country. And my son dies of fentanyl poisoning at 23. My wife soon followed, 4.5 years later from alcohol abuse, from the grief of losing a child. And so I lost, in a set of 5 years from 50 to 56, which should be really the time I'm counting my chips and buying a retirement property and kind of getting ready to go into that comfortable part of my life. I just got completely uprooted. And I soon realized that I really had one road to go down, and that was what I call the better road. That's kind of what we talk about in our presentations. And so going back to 800 a day, and you think about what the effect one or two deaths had in my family. And, Seth had a child 3 weeks after he died. His daughter was born. So now I have a granddaughter, doesn't have a dad or a grandmother, and she's 5. And my boys don't have an older brother and a mom, and they're 20 and 18. So, what can I do to not only try to be the best dad I can be and best grandpa I can be, but also make a difference, make a change. And I get very frustrated with this raising awareness campaign. It seems like everybody's on. I just, I'm like, maybe I'm looking at this wrong, Scott. Maybe I need to start trying to find the movers and the shakers that are actually doing something. And that's where our paths crossed. You were named the San Diego Man of the Year or something in 2019. And they don't give that to people that aren't doing things. They don't give that to just authors and people that have blogs and
By the way, it
podcasts.
wasn't actually Man of the Year. It was just Scott Silverman Day. I got a day, one
You're
day.
Man of the Year for me.
Yeah, well, I
I'll make you
appreciate
Man of the Year in Iowa. How's that?
it. It's
You're Man
interesting.
of the Year in Cedar Rapids, Iowa.
Cute story.
Um,
That was in the city, and one day the county was doing Animal of the Week, and people were getting frustrated because everyone loves animals, and they said, you really need to start honoring people because the city's been doing it. I got
yeah,
honored. It was the first week where they were doing a Human of the Week. And I remember I was called in and I got the award at the county board of supervisors, went in, accepted my little citation. And then I got all kinds of flack from people going, well, where's all the animals? We wanted the animals back.
yeah.
And I was like, oh my God.
We want to
So,
see the Doberman of the week, not this Scott guy.
yeah. And I try to leverage those accolades so I can open doors and kick down
Yeah,
doors. And, I got to tell you, you will not, I'm pretty confident you will not find anybody as I'm going to use the word aggressive, but passionate. I mean, I do my own happy hour podcast, which I will have you on soon. Maybe we'll do it while you're
that'd be
on the
great.
road, but I record them and it takes a couple of weeks for my producer since he's a
Yeah,
volunteer. But I do all of that because I really, I care. And I don't see our leaders doing it. And when you see high profile people who experience a loss, you'd think they would work a little harder to help because
yeah,
they've got a platform. And it's
right.
what's her name, Devato, when she talked about being California sober. So what I do is I pick up on those buzz lines and I try to find ways to leverage that, but it's not something people want to hear. It's because it's scary. And 1 in 5 families are impacted by some form of addiction,
Right.
and 15% of the population has an addiction issue that will rise. And look, I'm in an industry that does $40 billion of billable time to insurance companies, and we have a 95% failure rate.
I know. It's just
95%.
astounding. It's astounding.
And that's
And this is
documented,
one
and
of
it's
the,
been like that for decades. So when you ask the question, are the people, Marshall Goldsmith, motivational speaker guy, is out here. He wrote a book called What Got You Here Won't Get You There. So to my point is,
right.
I'm not going to accept, you know, whatever the current standard is. I slam the mayor publicly whenever I can because in our city, population of homeless doubled. How'd that happen? How in the heck did that happen?
Right.
And by the way, California has 50% of the homeless in the whole country right here. And half of those are in San Francisco, Los Angeles, and
Yeah.
San Diego.
Yeah.
So if that kind of situation can be completely out of control, I mean, Los Angeles, Skid Row has 50,000 homeless. San Francisco is pretty much run
Wow.
by the homeless. God forbid somebody
That's
ever gets
just,
a hold of the homeless and unionize them, they'll shut down metropolitan centers. So my point is, whoever's in charge, I don't trust them, first of all, because I don't think they have the skill sets. I don't think they have the time. I don't think they understand the problem. And they keep throwing money at the same people doing the same thing, getting the same result, which, as you know, is one of the purest definitions of insanity.
yeah, there's a great quote I used to say when I was well, I still am. I haven't sold my investment company, but for my whole life since I was 23, I've built up a wealth management firm here in Cedar Rapids. That's what I was doing before all this happened. But there's this saying we used to say, if you always do what you always done, you'll always get what you always got. And that's a saying I had above my desk. So it's like, so I look at this mental health initiative that we're on right now, and people say, Jeff, man, you've got a fire lit under you, and you've really taken tragedy, and I kind of think to myself, okay, but what other option do I have? So my option, you're saying that there is actually an option for me to get drunk every day, start doing drugs, start lying and being deceitful, and start, I said, that's not a road that anyone wants to be on. That's called the bitter road. And I really need to stay off that. So I have just developed most of it just personally ways to kind of trick my brain and not play these narratives that are presented. Like even the word sober, Scott, I don't call myself sober because to me, I'm not drinking at 11:24 a.m. on Tuesday, April 26th. And I don't complicate my mind any more than that. Now I may drink tomorrow. I may die tonight to even not even make it to tomorrow. So I've really just learned for me to really break down these things as I like to say, small steps. And I think I've got this passion now where I want to kind of upset the apple cart, the mental health space. And I want to do it by changing the narrative, by changing your mindset type of thought process. And then I go back to, and anyone that follows me knows that I talk about stoicism a lot. And I talk about a lot of ways that we can reframe things given to us. So I have a sentence at the end of my presentations. I ask the audience to just think about, and it's a sentence I think that can change people's lives. It's actually a question. Do things happen to you or do things happen for you? And how you answer that really determines the rest of your life. And so if you are an alcoholic or a drug addict, or you're, something bad's happened to you, are you a victim or are you a victor? Or do you sit around and you say, woe is me, I can't stop doing this, blah, 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 blah. The politicians aren't getting involved. It's the Mexican drug cartels. Or are you like, okay, this happened for me. My son died for me, not for a reason. I don't know what the reason is. I'm going to go invent one if there isn't one, but it happened for me. And I think if we can get people before they become the substance abusers and the suicide, before the suicidal ideation, and get them to kind of rewire the way that they look at life, I think we have a chance. And again, that's not raising awareness. That's not, I'm probably not going to be similar to a lot of people that you hear speak before, because I'm almost exhausted of raising awareness. I mean, my son and my wife, they knew that what they were doing could take their life, yet they couldn't stop. And so, what is that pivot in the mind that can get people to stop? And I don't know. I'm like you. I'm not a clinician. I'm just a dad from
No,
Iowa that's a little
I'm not a
irritated with
clinician. I
how
said that
things have
earlier.
gone down.
I'm not a clinician.
I'm not either.
I'm just somebody who has experienced it and seen a lot of it. One of my new acronyms right now is PIE, because everybody likes pie. Prevent,
Yeah.
inform, and educate. To your point, because I think I dealt with a family just recently who lost a son, and his younger brother a year later is now on the same path his brother was. So heightened awareness,
Sure.
family, cognitivity, and
Yeah.
it's
Right.
like they're watching it happen again, and they were referred to me,
Yeah.
and I tried to get their son to. He was 17, he's invincible, and it won't happen to him.
Yeah.
But
Sure.
the accidental overdosing right
Right.
now with fentanyl is just so scary. And you're right, people can't,
It is.
And then you look at you look at oh God, what's his name that's on going through geez, the Star with his ex in the big divorce all over TV right now. What's his name? I can't believe I spaced.
Well,
He Pirates of the
I'll
Caribbean.
think of it when you tell. Oh, Johnny
Yeah,
Depp.
listening to Depp when someone said, well, why would you be drinking that early in the morning? He goes, well, it's happy hour
Right.
somewhere, and just watching him articulate that, and I think they become kind of the and Devato. These are major influencers that people want to follow, and then you look at sports stars. So when
Mm-hmm.
you talk about the term raising awareness, to me that's usually someone in the municipality who believes that the information they haven't quite gotten yet to assemble will help create change. And to me, it's BS, because
Mm-hmm.
we know,
I agree.
we absolutely
I
freaking
agree.
know right now what the data looks like. And when I heard somebody say recently, we need to go study affordable housing and what the long-term impact is going to be of a housing first model. And, everybody who's doing the housing first model never talks about accessing treatment for the person that's going to be housed. And 80% of the people on the street
Mm-hmm.
have a substance use disorder or a mental health disorder
Mm-hmm.
that's going undiagnosed and, more importantly, untreated. So, to your point, how do we get this
Mm-hmm.
information to people where it's as exciting as going through Krispy Kreme's drive-through and getting a warm donut? And I don't know if we'll ever make it that
Right.
attractive, but to me, shoot for the moon, you're bound to hit an eagle. So I think it's real important because it's real. And I deal with a lot of interventions in kids and, talking to a 16, 17, 18, 19-year old, they don't think they have a problem and they believe that whatever happened out there to their friend is not going to happen to them. And that to me is an unformed, and people get criticized. They go, Scott, my kid just wants to party. I said, well, if that's the position you're taking, then educate them to know that if they take a pill that looks like Xanax at a party, or they pick up a vape pipe that someone says,
Yeah.
this is laced with some fentanyl, give it a try. It's a real small amount. Why would you do that? It's like driving in the rain at 60
Yeah.
miles an hour with your lights off on your car. Who would do that?
Yeah.
So, raising awareness.
But
And by
when
the
you
way,
and I
you're
were
getting ready
younger,
to go on a raising awareness campaign, and that's how people will perceive it until you
it,
articulate your messaging
yeah.
to let them know why you want to create systemic change. Because, getting on the road, that's a lot of work. And, I'm sure it'll be some fun.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, and,
Yeah.
you'll be probably not sleeping much and speaking wherever you can. And I hope you get and
Mhm.
glean all the exposure you possibly can. Because, even if your perspective might be different, the fact that you're out there with a megaphone talking about it, because and I do another podcast on Mondays called Reduce the Stigma. And what we talk about is trying to get the
Mhm.
conversations going. And that's the way we do it. It's just talk about it. And I
Well,
don't want to create
what we're
awareness.
trying to do at Living Under.
I was saying I don't want to create
Go
awareness.
ahead.
I want to create systemic change. I think people are way too aware. If 1 in 5 families have an addiction issue, and 15% of the country has it, and only 10% will seek help. And here's an interesting factoid. Of the 15% who have an active addiction issue that will, implode or explode in the next 12 months, they will, as impaired people, untreated, they will impact 7 others each day, each negatively. So that's
Yeah.
85% of our
Yeah.
population. So we should be talking about this just like we do nutrition and having a good breakfast. And, if you watch anything on YouTube,
Yeah.
so I'm sure I'm preaching to the choir, but how
You're,
do we do
you're,
that?
you're spot on, because I talk about in my speech about the 3 foundations or the pillars of the living undeterred mindset: expectations, preparation, and evolution. And in preparation, I talk about toxicity. And people initially think, well, toxic relationships. Well, I'm talking about toxic TV, toxic food, toxic books, toxic relationships, sure. But my metaphor I use for my audience is, imagine you're treading water and you have a toxic item hanging on your ankle. Let's say you like pizza or donuts, or you don't want to work out, or you watch Fox News all day, or you have a friend that's negative all the time, and you cut that cord off your ankle. The first thing you're going to do is you're going to pop up to the surface, right? Well, there's no guarantee that anyone's going to be there, but you're going to be able to swim to shore possibly and help yourself again. But by chance, maybe somebody's there to pull you out. So in my mind, I like to tell people, every one negative, toxic thing that you cut, you add 5 positive things to your life. Now, I have no evidence for that. I've just made that up. But it should help people understand the importance of preparing themselves for life's journey. And you can't do it drunk. You can't do it high. You can't do it unhealthy. You can't do it poor sleeping. You can't do it on prescription pills. So, it's like I like to tell people, I can't tell you how to grieve successfully. I can't tell you how to fight your issues successfully, but I certainly can tell you how not to do this, how not to do it.
Right.
And that's drunk, high, lying, sleeping in, eating unhealthy. Those are clear cut ways that are going to hold you down underwater. And if you can cut some of these, at a time, you can't give up everything at once. But if you can slowly start cutting things like I have done, I quit drinking in 2017. I lost 40 pounds. I work out every day. I meditate every day. I'm not a superstar, man. I'm no more an important human being than anybody else. That homeless person in San Diego is just as important as me. So how do you and I, Scott, find people to kind of look inside and make these adjustments? And that's the mission that we're on with the tour. And I'm sure that's what you try to figure out every day. You talk to advocates and people that are in the trenches like you and I are, it's a constant exploration, less than explaining opinions to people. You and I are out exploring. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah. And I think what's interesting is, I belong to anonymous programs, a few of them actually. And, one of the big things is it's all about attraction, not promotion. The problem with that is it takes a little while to get that information out, and people are expiring too quickly right now. So what I try to do is,
Mm-hmm.
just be present, and I've become a pretty good listener. But on the other hand, if
Mm-hmm.
somebody, if somebody's on fire, I'm not bringing a squirt gun. I'm going to turn on a big hose,
Yeah. Yep.
or wrap them in blankets.
Yep.
And I just find that,
Yep.
the process people just tend to process their solution for them, because that's kind of how they, earn their way to have a seat at the table. And some of them, I mean, I go to these meetings, 70 people in
Mm-hmm.
the room, 65 of them are all paid to be there. I'm one of the five that isn't being paid to be there. And they're just like, watching the
Mm.
power. I got a big presentation coming up in May, and they just got picked up, NIDA, and it got picked up on a national basis, and they want my PowerPoint. I go, look, I don't want to have a PowerPoint. I don't do PowerPoints. I want to talk directly to the audience. I'm going to take any question you want to put in front of me. And I was chosen to do this because finally, locally, they said, Scott, you're a nationally recognized expert. I don't know why we're not taking advantage of you. I'm like, what? Really?
Yeah.
Hello? My God. So, I can't kick any more doors in. My foot hurts. I've got arthritis. I'm older now, and I don't want to keep doing that, because what happens is you don't get received well. So I'm going to go back to one of your points, that when you're talking to people, one of the things I've learned, Jeff, is most of us want to know what's in it for me. So if I
Mm-hmm.
can provide what's in it for you, and then when you're talking to somebody and you're saying to them, what's in it for you is you're 26 years old, you could live a long life. And when someone reacts
Mm-hmm.
to you in a way and says, I'm not really worried about tomorrow. I want to party
Mm-hmm.
today. It's hard to
Mm-hmm.
get through to them,
Mm-hmm.
because if the idea of life is not an incentive, it's really hard. Now the parents, different. I mean, they want to have their child around,
Yeah.
and they're watching them, slowly kill themselves. And I get the question,
Right.
can you fix this? And I'm like, well, no, I can't fix it. If I could fix it,
Right.
I would have given you a pill, or there'd be some
Right.
sort of wristband you could wear. And, and there's no vaccine for addiction. And in my
Yeah.
opinion, I don't
Right.
think we're further along now than we were in 1935 when Bill and Bob started Alcoholics Anonymous, to say that we know how to really treat substance use disorders with outcomes
I
improving.
think we're worse.
Well, because we have more people with less skills treating more people, correct? But
Right.
there is no model,
Right.
according to science. There is no
The
model.
information's better.
Yeah, I mean, a buddy of mine traveled the
Yeah.
world.
The information's better.
Well, the information's better, but think about it. If the percentage of the population is increasing with those who suffer from it, and then you factor in untreated mental health issues, untreated trauma,
Right.
and look, today, in April, was it 26th? If you want to go see a psychiatrist, you've got up to a 60-day wait time. And people in that industry, they're not even working it.
That's got to
Well,
change. That's got to
and
change.
who's going to create the
Yep.
incentive? Because mental health issues are very opaque, and they take time. And in my opinion,
Yeah.
it's hard to help somebody 1 hour a week. California is now trying. Now
You
they
know,
want to do a
doc.
mandatory hold. The governor's trying, and ACLU stepped in the other day and said, nope, not going to happen. You're not going to lock people down. Well, what if they're out there? They've been arrested 47 times. They've been to the ER 60 times. Do you don't think they'd be a good candidate for a longer term, kind of a restricted environment to help them get
Mm-hmm.
the support they need? Can't make someone do something they don't want to do. That's California. So I would probably assume
Yeah.
I'd probably be
That's what.
famous if I left California and did my work in any other state. But I love it here. I grew up here, and
In Iowa. Yeah.
Iowa, yeah. Well, I got a buddy in Iowa.
So
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 good.
So Dr. Gabor Mate, I think I pronounced that right, claims that most addiction issues are childhood trauma based. And then you have Johan Hari, who's another addiction expert, claims that the opposite of addiction is connection, connectivity. So you have two renowned experts that really have two different lenses they're viewing this from. Dr. Mate says almost all of our issues are based in our childhood, unresolved issues, repressed abuse, things like that. which is a pretty fatalistic, nihilistic way to look at our youth, I guess. And then you have, Johan Hari, who says, well, the opposite of addiction isn't sobriety. It's not being clean. It's vulnerability. It's connection. It's talking to other humans. So again, you got two really separate foundations that these two have built pretty successful careers on. So it lends me to your question, or a question to you. Where do you think addiction stems from? Is it more disease or is it more choice? And where does telling your story and being vulnerable come into helping those that are struggling?
Well, the last part first. I think when people hear somebody else share their truth, and it resonates with them, they have a level of connectivity, the connection piece. I look at the addiction as
Yeah.
an allergy, and I also compare it almost all the time with diabetes. It's a disease, and you don't get a choice. And is it treatable? Yes, just like diabetes is treatable. But we don't hold people hostage who have diabetes. They don't say, well, gee, wait, come back when you're really desperate. And the disease of addiction is one of the few, if not the only one, where people push back. They think it's a moral failing. It's stigmatized all the time. And
Right.
even insurance companies want, they want proof that this individual. And how do you fix somebody who's had a problem for 8, 10, 15 years with 8 weeks of outpatient program, and then cut, because a lot of treatment's
Right.
benefits driven. And I know both of those theories that those gentlemen talk about. And at the end of the day, most most trauma that most people suffer, people say it comes from childhood, but I got to tell you, we have a huge commitment to working with veterans, and most of their PTSD happened while they were, um, you know, overseas or fighting or involved. So, and we're
Right.
seeing that now, and it's amazing, because I think the VA has a ton of data around the vets. But the treatment side is what, look, I work with a lot of doctors, a lot of professionals. And they all talk about the problem. They talk about addiction. They talk about access to prescription medication. I mean, I run another nonprofit called Safe Homes Coalition. We educate the community
Yeah, I
on
saw
how to
that.
remove
Yeah.
unsafe and unused medication. And the
Hmm.
county just took my money back, 27 grand. Well, the year is up. I said, it's one of the biggest problems we have in our community. Overdoses are up 600% in San Diego. I said, I can't give you any more data than showing you what we did this last year.
Yeah.
And they said, well, you have to turn it back in, or we're going to come get it. So I wrote him a check and gave it to him. It's like, I can't believe it. But because politically, the person who gave it to us is no longer in position. Someone else is their district, and they don't want to approve it until it goes through a competitive round. It's like, are you kidding? What I do with that money is take the crisis call
Yeah.
that the county can't. Anyway, my point is, societally, we're spending a ton of money in San Diego, drug Medi-Cal. I mean, but I know the treatment centers everyone's going to, because I get that insight. So I have that insight that a lot of people don't have. So I believe it's a disease of addiction. And people say, well, you just need more willpower. And there's this old guy at my meeting. He shared, you'll love this. I hope you'll love it. Anyway, he says, if you think willpower works, next time you have diarrhea, try to control it. And
Hmm.
you can't.
That's a good
You
one.
can't. So,
Yeah, but I do want to go back to a conversation I had on a podcast about 6 months ago with a gentleman, and we were talking about this disease choice thing because I write about it in my book, and I don't. I kind of take a little bit of a position, but I think it's nature and nurture, disease and choice. I think it's a combination of both. I don't think it's one or the other. But so we were talking about roughly 85% of people's health problems as they at any stage is directly related to what they put in their mouth, basically. The food intake they take. And diabetes came up because some diabetes is hereditary, some of it's the food you eat. And so that person was saying, well, diabetes, for example, there are a percentage of people that would have never had diabetes had they had a healthier diet. And I don't, and again, as a doctor, I don't know I don't know if that's a true statement, but based on the people I talk with that are doctors, that is a true statement. But the issue with that is if you say that, it's like talking about the obesity problem in the country. Now you're fat shaming. Now it's like you're hurting the feelings of fat people. And it's like, a diabetic could very easily have been a diabetic because of the choices they made in the food they're eating. And last time I checked, pizza wasn't addictive. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. I don't know. But so I think there's more to kind of peel back these layers and try to really understand that at the end of the day, this probably is a heavy combination of both. And you probably have some individuals that are, you know, predispositions different than predetermination. So I'm really puzzled when I have these conversations in how we can get to some consensus that, I know that the disease model advocates are very, very aggressive on that. And then there's people that like the freedom model that's out there. They're all choice oriented. And I vacillate between back and forth because I could see legitimate arguments on both sides. But really, personally, Scott, I can only go off the evidence of my life experiences. And that's really all the real evidence we actually have. And my evidence was, as an alcoholic since 8th grade, that I quit cold turkey on December 24th, 2017. And it's been the easiest thing I've ever done in my life. And I'm not kidding you. When you bury a child, if you can't find something from that, then you'll end up, unfortunately, doing what my wife did and drank herself to death. And I think there's something in there, in that story of mine, where there is hope and inspiration that you can have the absolute worst things happen. And I don't have to be accepting the narrative of what somebody tells me I'm an alcoholic and I'm always an alcoholic. You know what? I personally don't believe that. Now, it helps me get through my urge to drink, but I think there's probably more people that can look at it that way. It's no different than when my son was diagnosed in 5th grade as attention deficit, which is another whole thing I could go on for an hour. I have full-blown attention deficit, full-blown. And my staff and people who work with me says I'm like a 10 out of 10, but I think I'm like a 5. But my dad told me when I was little, and I never made honor roll, grades weren't good because little Jeffy always looked out the window. Little Jeffy couldn't stop talking. Little Jeffy couldn't stop, moving. And my dad said, Jeff, this is a superpower. You have something the other kids don't have. You can take it out of kids. You can't put it in them. And I thought at 5 and 6, 7, 8 years old, you know what? I felt sorry for the little kids that weren't hyper like little Jeffy because my dad told me it was a superpower. I believed him. A doctor didn't say, Jeff, you have attention deficit. It's a disorder. You're going to be a werewolf at midnight. Take this pill. Now, my son was given Adderall at 16, and he thought his attention deficit was a disorder, and he thought he was a werewolf. And he was one of the many people that shouldn't have been given Adderall because, first of all, he took too much of it. And then when he took less of it, he fell off and crashed and burned. And then he started drinking and doing drugs, and then he was incarcerated, then he was dead. So I'm not blaming the medical profession. I'm saying my life experience is what I just told you. So I can't think I'm an anomaly. I can't think that what happened to us is just unique to me. So I'm really interested. Who am I to make a claim that it's a choice or a disease? But I do see in my personal situation, very poor choices were made. It cost 2 people that I love their life, but the choice I made was a good one, and I'm still here. So again, I'm really curious on this tour, Scott, to talk to the experts, the people that have their reputations, their livelihood, their bank accounts on the line with statements they make, and not to challenge them, but to educate me. Okay, if someone's really convinced it's a disease, then I'm open to teach me. What am I missing?
Yeah. You know what?
So I'm really excited about the tour.
I would absolutely challenge them and push them and shove them. Because here's the thing: I believe in our treatment center, we believe one size does not fit all. We just believe that one size does not fit all when it comes to treatment. And there are people who I believe who abuse things who may not have an addiction issue. It can happen. And look, harm reduction, now called, more popularly medication assisted treatment, really can be a great.
Yeah, I want to ask you about that too. So
yeah, so we look at that, and I'm the kind of guy. If somebody comes in and says, "Look, I'll give up alcohol, but I'm not giving up marijuana," I'd rather have them come to group and talk about that than exclude them because we're an abstinence based program. So, but on the other hand, if they had a primary diagnosis of depression because we're certified for alcohol and drug, we technically would have to have a primary diagnosis in order to bring them in because we're certified to get benefits. If they're a cash pay client or self pay
Mm-hmm.
client, we don't care. But I
Mm-hmm.
can only take so many scholarship clients a year because I've got to stay in business and I want to grow
Right.
my business because I want to help more people. And we're finding that veterans can, the depth and breadth of some of these issues, you can't even start treating, and I mean veterans in general, until you remove the anesthesia. So if somebody's even had a long-term
Mm.
prescription of Adderall, and now I got an alert yesterday that one of the biggest drugs found now in busts recently is Adderall cut or laced with fentanyl. Because Adderall,
I heard
you
that
think about
too.
the distributors and manufacturers. I mean, they're doing everything they can to get this fentanyl in everybody's hands. What a great portal is
They are.
Adderall, because, 25% of the kids in this country are on some form of medication. And most of us, I have ADHD. I mean, that's why my Zoom recovery meeting, with all the different cubicles, when we started going on Zoom, I loved it because there's 40 people. I'm watching people make breakfast, make coffee, mow their lawn with their earpieces on.
Yeah.
And I love it because I can watch
I love
all of it.
attention deficit. It's
Yeah,
awesome.
yeah. You and I should not spend much time in your motorhome because it would we would one of us would be riding on the roof after about the second or third day. But medication assisted treatment
Yeah.
is a great tool, But still, 95% relapse rate. There's a great movie, you can't get it anymore. Another producer bought it, called The Business of Recovery, and they interviewed the CEO of
Mm.
Betty Ford and the CEO of Hazleton at the same time, talking about recidivism and relapse rates. And it was interesting. I won't go into detail, but if you can find a copy, I think somebody bought it because they just didn't want it out there because it was very revealing. And
Hmm.
it basically said this model, this thing, that they're all getting the same outcome. And the social model, technically, which to that one doc's got the connection piece, works a lot. But if you're in the social model, but you're still taking something mood altering and it changes the way you feel, think, and live, it's hard to get better. And then you can't really treat the underlying
Hmm.
issues while you're under anesthesia. That's the way I look at it.
Hmm. What do you think about, and I've kind of formed a opinion on this, but what do you think about in AA? They really promote, this streak thing, being on a streak and people going on social media and saying, I've been sober for 1,500 days or whatever. And I recently had a friend I follow on LinkedIn that fell off, and she had been very adamant about not bragging, but being out there forcefully that, hey, I've been sober for 700 days or whatever. And she's in her mid 20s, I think. I admire her. She's very active. She's a big mental health advocate, but she fell off the wagon, I don't know, a few months back. And man, when she came back on, she was just, I thought she was going to kill herself. She was so down on herself. She was so apologetic. And I got to thinking, it's like, okay, you know, maybe there's something with this problem of keeping these streaks, and maybe we're looking at that the wrong way. So I personally don't keep a streak. I know what day I quit, but I don't. I just I see people really self-loathing, and they really torture themselves when they become human and fall off the wagon, which is perfectly part of recovery. It's those relapses are not encouraged, but they build foundations. Every time you relapse, you get a little stronger. And but these people punish themselves so much public, especially the ones that are public about it. And they just like feel like they let down their minions. And it's like, no. Screw that. You're not letting down anybody. And I think that's the illusion of being over vulnerable when people are out there in their face showing their, and I don't know, maybe I'm just, I don't know, maybe I'm trying to look at every single way that this has been done. Like we said, you do the same thing over and over, you're going to get the same result. And the big, that AA really hasn't adjusted too much. I've been to only a few meetings, so I'm not an expert in AA, but it seems to me they're really kind of entrenched in some of the old ways that this has been done. And I know one of the things is have people keep track of how many days they've been sober. Do you have any thoughts on that? I mean, do you think that's a viable way, or do you think maybe there is some potential to look at this a little differently? Because I know one thing, I'm on a meditation app, and when I was on the Waking Up app with Sam Harris, he used to have a thing on there where you kept score of your streaks. And finally, Sam, who's a huge thought leader, he took it off and he said, I was finding people just manipulating it for public appearance, and they were coming on the app, clicking on it, they meditated, then they would say they've been, and I thought to myself, why wouldn't that same concept work with people who claim to be sober? And that could be easily manipulated as well. I thought I'd throw it out there and see what your thoughts are on that.
I got a buddy of mine that's what do they call that bike? The Patreon bike. Where people ride.
Yeah, Peloton.
Peloton. And he,
Yep.
he like rode 400 consecutive days, and like you just said, and it's a competitive group, and he's riding with people internationally, and he's been riding for 30 years. So I think, to answer your question, first of all, I think that the anonymity that 12-step programs promote are really important. But on the other hand, I think people's success shouldn't be kept a secret because it's inspirational. And I think there's a false positive around it. And what's interesting, there are studies that have been done that, you go to a meeting every week, hypothetically, and you raise your hand, you go, "Hi, I'm Scott. I'm a drug addict and alcoholic." The negative reinforcement of just saying that out loud
I
in a
know.
room,
I know.
kind of, allows the
I've always thought about that.
It is fascinating because there's studies that have been done, the outcomes, because
Can I stop you a second real quick? Because in my book, you'll like this. I said, let's imagine there's an Overeaters Anonymous, and you're going in there 40 pounds overweight. So you stand up, you say, "Hi, I'm Jeff. I'm fat, and I want to lose weight. Thank you, whatever." And then you lose weight, and now you've lost the 40 pounds. You don't stand up and say, "Hi, I'm Jeff. I'm fat." And that's why this whole thing about once an alcoholic, always an alcoholic, I'm challenging that narrative, because use weight loss again. I mean, let's say you were able to conquer your weight loss and at least lose weight. The hard part is keeping it off. Just like quitting drinking is easy. The hard part's never drinking again. But we don't stand up in Overeaters Anonymous classes and say, "Hey, I'm Jeff, I'm fat." You may say, "I'm Jeff, I have an eating problem," but it's like, I'm trying to think, if what we were doing was working, I wouldn't be doing this.
Yeah.
And if we're doing was working, we wouldn't be building more rehab facilities, and we wouldn't be burying more people. And so maybe some of the simple ways we're looking at this issue, such as, like you said, "Hi, I'm Scott. I'm an alcoholic and a drug addict." It's like negative, negative, negative. Maybe, just maybe, we need to change that. I don't know.
Well, here's what I know about the anonymous programs. I mean, my first book, "Tell Me No, I Dare You," in there I tell my story, and I self-admit, disclose publicly, and I just wanted to. Anyway, I got in trouble in San Diego because one of the traditions is you're not supposed to tell people that you're in recovery, because it may encourage someone else to say it out loud, and then they might lose their job. So I got pissed, and then all of a sudden I got a phone call from some people in Sacramento. They're coming to San Diego, and they want to know if they can meet with me about me breaking the traditions. I go, "I'm not on contract with Alcoholics Anonymous, for God's sakes. Are you serious?" "Well, we really would like to spend some time with you."
Right.
So I took coffee, and we're talking. I go, "What's it going to take for you guys to go away? How about I sign a book and give you one free?" Okay. They were doing their due diligence. And 6 months later, a buddy of mine who was really committed to the recovery program says to me, "Scott, we just got a letter from New York, Alcoholics Anonymous Central, that your complaint, the complaint that they filed in California, in San Diego, that went to Sacramento, and I guess they got a copy of your book, is now on file in national office." And he goes,
Come on.
I'm serious. He goes, "I really want to thank you. We finally got on the map in a little meeting in Ocean Beach here in San Diego in the national office." And he goes,
Good.
"I personally appreciate it, but I know you'll probably get some flack over it." So my point is, I think you said you're in your 50s, right? Okay.
I'm 56.
Okay. Well, that's in your 50s. Someone the other day said, "I'm in my mid to high 60s." And I'm like,
yeah. Yeah, that would be.
I'm 68. Where would that put me, if mid to high? So here's what I would suggest. And I haven't taken time to give you any suggestions. Don't worry about the 12-step programs, because first of all, systemic change probably will take a long time for them. And the concept of Alcoholics Anonymous, that is worldwide, if you think about it, the social model of what 12 steps have created, ultimately have the same success rate as a $300,000 a month rehab. Actually, even better, because they maintain
Hmm.
that 5%.
I would agree.
Because
Yep.
and anyone can go, everyone is welcome, and there's a meeting everywhere. Which
Yep.
and you'd think with the COVID issue in the pandemic, there'd be more people going to more meetings. Now I go to 4 meetings a week, and I'm 37 years sober. But I go because
You go to
it's so
4 a week.
yeah, yeah.
Wow.
Well, because I like watching people make their breakfast and have coffee, and I'm sitting there listening to these stories, and it's like, this it's good for my
Well, and you like inspiring people too.
yeah.
You
My
know, you
wife
like
thinks I'm a
giving
well,
back, and that's one of the reasons why you
my wife
go.
thinks I'm a stalker because some mornings I just I don't show my face. They see my name, they know it's me, and I've been going to this one meeting for 33 years. So, but I do it because there's always something in the room that resonates with me. There's always a story or someone who's just experienced a relapse or someone who's done really well. So I get inspired from the person who may have only 20 hours of sobriety to the person who, this guy is funny. He's, I won't give you his name, but he's been on the internet with somebody in the Philippines, one of those, meet someone overseas. And he's been talking
Mhm.
about for months going to meet her, never met her, seen her, talk, and then he got COVID. So his trip got delayed. And then he finally went over. And this morning he's up on the screen and his room's a friggin' mess. And, it looks like he just came back and
Mhm.
just flailed everything on the shelves. He was going to wash everything today. And he goes, well, I just spent 10 days and I came back, with an intestinal infection. So I called him out, you're not supposed to crosstalk, but I shared and I go, yo, I won't give you his name. I said, how is it you went for 10 days to meet someone you fell in love with online and all you want to share is you came back with an intestinal infection, for God's sake? Guy's my age and maybe a couple of years younger.
Yeah.
Anyway, but that's kind of how the mindset goes. Cause when you get in and people say it all the time, I go to these meetings, it's so depressing. And I said, you know what? Take the positive pieces. And that's to your point earlier that,
Yeah.
you have a choice. You can say to yourself, oh my God. And I'm a catastrophic thinker. I mean, if you walked into my office, okay, and you said, where the hell is, and you didn't put a name there, I would assume you're talking to me. So I have to be careful because I'm sensitive to it. And I grew up in a family business and there were hundreds of employees at one time. And, I was under the influence almost every day. And, I literally tried to
Yeah.
take my own life. So my level of understanding, I'll take anything that works. I mean, who's that guy? You probably know him that he did the little rat town, where he tested rats. And he said, it's who
Yeah.
you hang out with, it's who your tribe is.
You're exactly right. I've heard that story presented because the criticism was, if you give rats the cocaine, they're going to get stoned or whatever, or get high. And the reality was, once you change the environment and you left the cocaine there, the rats figured out that they didn't want to do that. But if you only put cocaine in there, nothing
Yeah.
else, then sure they're going to get
I
high.
just don't
So you're right. I mean, I think there's a lot to do with
I don't trust the rats. I mean, I
changing
told you I don't
environment.
trust the rats because they document differently than we do. So it's kind of like I have a higher power and I have a God that I'm comfortable with, and I have both because I'm Jewish. And I went into this
Hmm.
program; it was Christian based. I had a huge problem with it. I mean, my rabbi came to visit me
Sure.
in treatment, and he said, Scott, Jewish people don't have alcohol problems. I go, Rabbi, I got a wristband. There's alarms on every door. There's security in the parking lot. I have a problem. He goes, let me tell you something. God is within you. He's within all of us. I said, well, I'll tell you, if God's within me, last week when I was in New York with 5 nights of blackouts, he was a party animal because we got twisted all week long and then picked up by the police.
Yeah.
So I went through a lot of different barriers of that. I learned to pray, okay, as a Jew, which was
Hmm.
unheard of. You don't do that. My sponsor said, put your cigarettes underneath your bed when you wake up in the morning and you find yourself on your knees reaching for your cigarettes. Just thank God for getting you through another day. That's how I learned to pray. So
Hmm.
it's little things that
Hmm.
make big differences. But today, even there's nothing I didn't put in my body except heroin because I'm afraid of needles. And it's not necessarily what I was doing during the days. It's the mix of stuff that's going on now. Then you factor in the prescription medication. I mean, this Whitney Houston classic case: prescription medication, street cocaine,
I watched the documentary the other day. Yep.
alcohol. I mean, it's that combination, and then you
Yep.
factor in the underlying. untreated trauma or behavioral health issues, people are a lot more sensitive, and that's why we're seeing the overdose rate go the way it's going right now. Is forgetting fentanyl, which is poison, but I mean in general. And the suicide
Yeah.
rate with teens is up way too high. And you know, I
Yep.
think I think what you're about to bark on, to your point, you're going to get some interesting information, but I also think you'll probably come back
Right.
equally frustrated. And let's do everything we
Well, I
can to
think
keep a conversation going. I want to anyway.
yeah, I'll jump on that in a minute. And then I told you because you asked about we were talking about how long the show is, and I said, well, it's about an hour, but sometimes it feels longer, sometimes it feels shorter. I feel like you and I have been talking for like 10 minutes, and I looked up and it's been an hour, so we're having a really good conversation. So first of all, I'd love to be on your show. I'd love to get you back on this show and have an update. But I struggle with this tour and trying to explain to people what I'm trying to do because everybody thinks I'm out there on a lecture tour, a book signing tour. I'm on a
Awareness
this is what I
awareness
know
campaign.
tour.
You're
And
building awareness.
yeah, I mean, the reality is I don't know crap. And again, I'm 5 years into this. I've lost two people I care about. I'm on an exploration mission. And we went so far to name our RV the Endurance 2 in honor of Ernest Shackleton, who went to Antarctica and one of the greatest endurance and human stories of perseverance in human history, going back and saving his men, after having to leave. It's a tremendous story. We named our RV the Endurance 2 in honor of the ship that sank that they just found almost 100 years to the day. The Endurance was Ernest Shackleton's ship. So, I'm really trying to get people to understand I'm exploring alternative ways to shake up this mental health tree. I'm not out lecturing people. Certainly I have my presentation 30 minutes. I have some input and my opinions and my life story, but who am I at 56 that, had a gambling addiction, had an alcohol problem, buried two people. Who am I to claim that I know the right answers to things? Um, but I certainly will come back with a ton of information. So our objective is to build this organization, this machine, I call it. And after the tour, circle back with everybody that's interested in our story and connect people. Like Johan Hari said, that's how to solve this problem, connect people. Well, that's what we want to do with Living Undeterred. We want to turn this into a machine where we're ultimately connecting people. And that's my evil ulterior motive with the tour is that I want to build something that can change lives, not raise awareness. I think there's enough people do a better job than I'll ever do on that, but to try to change lives, and we do that by getting people to make better choices, and or become understanding why they make the choices that they make.
Yeah.
So listen, what words of wisdom would you want to add at the end of the show here to my followers that you could put a bow tie on this topic, the opioid epidemic, the mental health crisis? What are some things you've learned in your many years of being, many more years than I have experience wise? What can you give to my listeners to give them hope and inspiration?
Yeah. Well, before I answer that one, after listening to you articulate your mission for your travel, I would highly recommend, if you can get thought circles going, my words, whatever your voice is for that, with younger people, and ask them that question. What you just said, I'm not here to build awareness because I think we all have it. What I want to know from you is how do we, and I don't want to say this, I'm going to say it, but how do we fix it, whatever it is, and find out from them what they
Mm-hmm.
think that it is. I mean, and to your point, I think
Oh, I love
I
that.
think
I love
if
that.
you make the thousands of new friends who become kindred spirits, in my opinion, if you just do that, you'll have a network if you have capacity to build on to grow the information cycle in a way that you probably, because you're right, you're going to be perceived as this, and and the media is going to ask you certain
Right.
questions a certain way because that's what they do,
They already have.
and you just have to push
They
back,
already
and
have.
just what, do what Kevin McCarthy does. I hear your question, but I think, or I believe, or I think you're hitting it.
Yeah.
So get your agenda out there.
My standard answer right now, I've been talking to my staff about this. I said, when the media comes in and they're going to ask you those trap questions, what's changing the narrative? Why you? What's different about you? My standard answer is, if what we were doing was working, we wouldn't be doing the tour,
Right. And you know
and leave
what?
it at that.
I
Because
dare you.
that really encompasses everything.
And I dare you, third party credibility. Point to me. Say, you know what? Call my new friend, Scott H. Silverman.
Oh, I'm gonna drag you into this
Oh, yeah.
project at some
Well,
capacity. So,
I don't want to do that. I don't want to do the other part. I mean, maybe because I've got to focus on my organization right now. But I know there's, hey, look, I'm
yeah,
available anytime. You people have your people have my phone number. I give it out all the time, by the way, 619-993-2738, 619-993-2738. Call or text me anytime. Okay, back to your question. I believe there's always hope and always help. Three of the toughest words in the English language is I need help. I would like to encourage you to use those three words whenever you can. And if no one's told you they love you today, I love you.
I love you too, brother.
Well, that was really more
And I'm
for your
honored to have
guests.
you on the
That was
show.
more for your guests. You and I are going to do.
No, that was for me. I took that personally.
I looked at the camera because I want. Yeah, obviously it's going through. You're the vessel. So look, anytime you need me, you call me. I'm one of those people when my phone rings and I don't recognize the number, I get excited. I really get excited because to me,
Yeah.
that's the hope and help, and that may be a family member. I mean, just yesterday, this lady
Right.
calls me at 7:30 in the morning and says, "Hey, I really need your help." Blah blah blah. I call back at 9. Her son answers the phone. He goes, "Yeah, my mom called. We really need your help, but I can't remember where I put my van last night. So we're going to look for it. Can I call you after we find
Oh,
the van?"
geez.
I go, "Yeah, real quick. How old are you?" He goes, 52. His mom says, "My son needs 52." She's
Wow.
been living with this for 35 years. There's always hope and help, brother. Okay.
Well, there's always hope, because that was the age I quit. 52 is the age I quit. So it's never too late. Anyone watching this, it's never too
Oh,
late.
yeah.
Listen, I'm going to let you run. Thanks so much. And I'm going to tap you, your resources, your wealth of knowledge on the
I
tour.
dare you. I
And
dare
it's
you
been
to
an,
do that. I dare you.
I will. You're on my list of contacts that I highly respect. So
Yeah.
thanks again, Scott, for being on the Living on a Turd
Thanks for
podcast. And
having me, Tim.
I'm very happy our paths
This
crossed.
was awesome. You made my day.